Um, Hello to everyone. Welcome to this session. The session is on youth-led solutions to enhancing the resilience of Africa food system. It is hosted by Generation Africa. I'm Henry Lagat, and I'll be your curator for this session. I'm the Associate Partnerships Officer for Generation Africa. So Generation Africa is a thematic platform under the AGRF, supported by partners who are AGRA, IARA, Syngenta Foundation, Cotiva, SACAU, USAID, and Econet. We focus on youth in agribusiness, where we inspire young Africans to take part in the food system, as well as we work with other ecosystem players to create a conducive environment, support all these young entrepreneurs so that they can have a comfortable journey through the entrepreneurship process. We're excited to host this. So some of the housekeeping rules, kindly always keep your mic on mute. Number one, to put your camera off. We will have an opportunity for everyone to take part in this discussion. We encourage everyone to get into the chat, tell us where you're from, the name and the organization that you represent. Also put in questions that you'd like us to look into, give us your suggestions. We'll have a plenary where we have sufficient time to have a discussion on this. But at this point, I would like to welcome Dixon Oftali, who is the head of Generation Africa, to give his opening remarks, and then he will introduce Anne, who is the co-chair of the Generation Africa Steer Corps, to also give his remarks. So welcome, Dixon.
Thanks, Henry, for those remarks, and welcome everybody on this call, on this dialogue. It's a pleasure to have all of you. So I'll also give a small introduction of Generation Africa just for those who are new to us, and say that at Generation Africa, we try to inspire more young agripreneurs to join the agri-food sector. We increase the knowledge and finance to young businesses, business services and markets. We strengthen their voices so that they can be heard by the policymakers, influencers, and decision makers. And we also strengthen the ecosystem of where they operate, these young agripreneurs. And this is through mapping and understanding at what point of the cycle they're in. Are they a startup? Are they at the growth stage? Are they at the maturity stage? We try to find what direct support do they need. Do they need just inspiration or education as well? Business development services or policies around them to be strengthened? And what enabling environments do they need? What infrastructure, what technology, the kind of data that they need, the sectoral policies and the startup policies. And then we try to ask ourselves, then how can we organize for change? Who else is doing what where in this space? And so we try to look for existing networks and policy forums such as this, just to bring out more of those challenges and solutions that the young businesses experience. So we cannot do this ourselves, so we need such dialogues as the one for today. And the objective today is to identify the youth-led solutions to enhance resilience of Africa's food systems. And we are very lucky to have a very strong panelists to help us in this discussion. And today you realize that we have the curator, the facilitators, and half of the panelists being purely the young people, already starting to live that promise of transforming young people by example. And so this food transformation requires coordinated multi-sector interventions that can only be achieved through strong partnerships as this. So you're most welcome. And so without further ado, I will welcome one of our co-chairs, to open up, and another co-chair is going to close. So the co-chair to open up our discussion is Anne Cartridge, the Executive Director, Imagine. Welcome, Anne, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dixon, and thanks to you and Henry for hosting us today. I'm truly excited, and you know, I think this is a very important dialogue. Ideally, I would have liked us all to be together in person, but also I guess we all, you know, getting used to being operating in this virtual type of Zoom space. So just to let me share, you know, a few reflections. I think we find ourselves somehow historically in a very powerful and important moment, an inflection point or a crossroads, if you like. And it's also an opportunity. I think part of why we had together today is the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit, and I think the youth, you know, we need to make sure that the youth voice is really heard and comes to the table at the Food Summit. As I said, I think, you know, it is kind of a crossroads, and one could say that down one road, one path is, you know, increased unemployment, increased migration, poverty, you know, challenges. Down the other path, down the other road is untapped opportunities. And I think it's on all of us to really see how can we pursue and how can we unlock those opportunities that are clearly there. And the power that lies on the continent with the youth bulge. To do so, I think we need to somehow try to reimagine the future and how to cultivate what I would call the entrepreneurial spirit. We need to inspire. We need to crowd in talent, and we need to crowd in the investments. And to do so, I think we should ask ourselves, what can we do today? So while this is a longer journey, but it's always also the ask of what can we do now? So I think that's something we should put on all of us. And how do we do that into, you know, to propel, I would call it, the agri-food stars of tomorrow. It's the youth who can carry this forward and really become those, as I said, agri-food stars. We also need to recognize it's not an easy journey. So we need to build that community, that ecosystem of support, either that is in the inspiration, education, or through business development services, or how to bring in growth capital. We also need to recognize, I think, is that it's also down to the individuals, and how do we support each of these individuals, these young people who have the ideas, the talent, the inspiration to go ahead on their own respective journeys. How do they build confidence? How do they build resilience? And how do they also engage in a much wider community as they grow their ideas or their business? It's also important, I think, to really, how do we close the gender gap? And as Generation Africa and its Go-Getters competition have said, you know, for the 12 finalists, it needs to be 6 men and 6 women. So we need to be very conscious about how do we support both genders. I really look forward to, as I said, this dialogue today, and for the further insight and engagement, and also to see how Generation Africa can continue supporting the youth-led solution going forward. So thank you, and back to you, Dixon.
Thanks, Anne. Thank you very much for those few challenging remarks. You know, looking into the future and looking forward. I'm sure a lot of that is going to be discussed today. So Henry, back to you as our curator. You know, take it away.
Thank you, Dixon. So we're going to run a short survey just to understand who is in the room. So we just want to understand which sector you operate in, what's your gender, and the kind of age that you lie, so that you will be able to see. If you look at the screen, you'll be able to see that. So kindly fill that out for us so that we'll be able to proceed. But even as we do that, I'd like to remind everyone that kindly keep your mic on mute and your video off, and continue contributing to the conversation. The chat area is open, so If you have any question, any suggestion, kindly feel free to write it there, and we'll have an opportunity to do this in the plenary. So the poll results are coming in and they're interesting. I can see we have almost 50-50 representation in terms of gender. We have a higher percentage of young entrepreneurs, which is good because for this session, we really want to get the solutions that affirm the youth. So that's 34%, heading to 35 for the young entrepreneurs. So even as we move into this, so I would not have put it better than what our coach, Mr. Anne, has said.
Okay.
In terms of looking at the youth-led solution in enhancing the resilience of Africa food system, then we need to realize and look at the opportunity and what lies for it. This discussion falls under the UNFSS Action Track 5, which is building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress. And in our particular case, we want to look at the young entrepreneurs. How do we help them to establish resilient businesses that will withstand the tide of change? As you are aware, the global and local food systems currently are weak, insufficient, and full of inefficiency. But there's a big opportunity. According to AFDB, Africa imports 40 billion USD worth of annual food yearly, and this is set to grow to 110 billion by 2025. And why do we want to focus on the youth? Africa is the youngest continent. We have a population of around 1.341 billion, and 60% of this is under 25 years. Out of the youth who are the age where they need to be employed, a third are employed and discouraged, another third is vulnerable. So there's a real issue that we need to look into. So in terms of the entrepreneurship journey, many youths have really tried to get into this space. Many who are here today. So many have tried, some have struggled and become successful. You'll be hearing from some of more successful go-getters in the plenary and in the breakout session. So some of them have been successful. Others are putting up a fight and they're trying to survive. Yet many have really tried to get into this space, but have failed and lost their business. A good example is last year when we, and even this year, Wrapup, when we experienced COVID-19, we saw most of young businesses or youth-led SMEs really struggled, and some of them closed down. And the statistics right now say that 60% of these businesses that closed down will not be able to reopen again. So COVID as a pandemic is just a tip of the iceberg for the African agripreneurs. We have issues like corruption, political instability, poor infrastructure. So as in every day, as long as you're a youth in Africa, you've decided to take the entrepreneurship journey, you're sure to face challenges. So the question today is how can we create a friendly and conducive environment that allows involvement and participation of youth in the food system? How can we create an ecosystem that supports the young entrepreneurs through the entrepreneurship journey, from ideas to scale up, so that we can all contribute to the food system and create an opportunity for the young Africans to take part in this environment. So we are excited to have a good lineup of subject matter experts and high potential SME alumni who will be in the breakout sessions. So in the breakout session, we decided to go with 4 areas which we prioritized. So number 1 is finance. And under finance, we want to understand, since it is always a burning topic, how do we help them access finance? How do we make them investment ready? Are there products which are able to sustain and which are available for the youth to enable them, come up with resilient businesses? In this breakout session, we will be led by none other but Sophie Nabuliri, who is our Generation Africa program coordinator. She'll be the facilitator here. And we will have two high potential SME alumni from the go-getters. Number one, we'll have Brigita Faustin, who is the CEO of Aubrey in Tanzania. We will have Olatayo, who is the CEO of Sofa Farm and Markets. And we'll also have two subject matter experts. Number one, we'll have Hedwig, who is the head of inclusive finance for Agra, and we'll also have Edson QC of AFDB, the chief financial economist and the coordinator of the Enabled Youth Program. This will be an interesting session. So once we agree that we're going into this session, then you can choose one of the four. The second session will be moderated by Jen Mashigera of JSF Communication, and it will be around policy. And in this breakout session, we want to understand, in terms of the solutions that we are coming up, we want to understand the policy framework in our countries. Are there enough government policies that support youth to get into agripreneurship? In terms of the private sector, are there enough incentive from the private sector to give to youth so that they can be encouraged to get into the food system and be able to establish some businesses? So in this panel, we will have two go-getters. So we have Bonolo Monte, who is the CEO of MongoCraft Botswana. Then we have Job Oyebisi, who is the founder and CEO of FarmCo. We will also have two subject matter experts. Number one, we have Simon Winter, who is the executive director of Syngenta Foundation, and Adam, who is the chief of staff for the 2021 Food System Summit. We hope to get their wisdom here, just to see that how do we navigate this policy landscape. The third will be business support services, facilitated by Majori Shiri, who works for Agra and a value for her. And in this session, we'll just be trying to understand what kind of business support services do we need to put in place so that when we are working with the youth, they are able to put in strong foundations to their businesses so that in case of any shocks, then they're able to sustain the pandemic or any other thing. Their businesses will remain resilient. We have Nono Sefoto, who's the founder of Grosu and also the lead in agribusiness for African leadership. She'll try to give us the perspective of the young agripreneur and how the journey is. We'll also have Jen Kizuka, who is the senior youth advisor for USAID Program Office, and Anne Cartridge, the executive director of Imagine Food Collective, and who is also our co-chair to the Generation Africa Secretariat. And then last but not least, we look into innovation, digitization, and mechanization, and trying to understand what opportunities lie there and what can be done in terms of data and building resilience for the youth while taking into consideration the current in innovation. So Mumbi Maina from the agribusiness field, which is also a thematic platform for the AGRF, will be facilitating the session. We will have two of our go-getters, rather one of our go-getters who's Dexter Tangochi from South Africa, CEO of Integrated Aerial Systems. We'll have Crispa Miliza from Hello Tetra, who is a digital sales representative there. We'll have our own co-chair to the Generation Africa Steerco, Jennifer Ban, and who is also the managing director of AGRF. And lastly, we'll have Matilda, who is the community and program manager for VC4A. So we really look we really look forward to an interesting conversation in this breakout session. We'll later have a plenary where we'll be able to discuss whatever has come out of this breakout session, and we'll have an open plenary where we'll be able to discuss what is the way forward, what more do we need to do in order to have the youth take part in this. So at this juncture, we are going to set the breakout session, then we select whichever room you want. Yes. Okay. So welcome everyone. I hope you all had an interesting discussion in the breakout sessions. I'm sorry, I can see some of the breakout sessions are not yet done. But I've been trying to go into 1 or 2 breakout sessions, and I've seen the kind of discussions that were going on were really healthy, and we were coming up with solutions. So I hope everyone is back. I can see the last one will close in 40 minutes. So during this time, I'd like to apologize. My mic was not really audible. But during that time, all I was trying to say is that it's the right time, there's opportunity, and we really need to focus on how then we get the youth to actively participate in the food systems, and how do we help them in terms of supporting them through the entrepreneurship journey. So I can see everyone is back. So welcome. Continue posting any questions, any suggestions on the chat box. We'll be able to go through that once we go through this plenary that we're about to begin. So we will start with Jane. Would like to understand in terms of policy and advocacy, what kind of game-changing ideas have you come up with, which will be able to, help the youth in terms of their journey in this agripreneurship as they try to get to scale and maturity. Welcome, Jane.
Sure. Hi again, everyone. So what came out of the policy and advocacy session was that there are a lot of infrastructural challenges when it comes to running a business. For example, issues related to limited power connections and working space. Our subject matter experts briefly discussed the solutions, which would be around engaging both government and private sector to look at solutions such as creating hub facilities, for example, where agripreneurs can work from to get all the resourcing and support that they need, but more importantly, using existing areas that can be converted into hubs. It was also discussed that we understand that location is key. So what is probably of the most importance is virtual versions of innovation hubs to be created for agripreneurs. The other learning or key point that was raised was around macroeconomic policies such as trade, fiscal and monetary policies, and the need for targeted state support to specific institutes which are designed to address the constraints that that are faced by micro and small enterprises. So, for example, even though interest rates are falling, lending rates are still very high, and this would obviously adversely affect credit supply, for example, to the sector. I think those were the 2 key learnings from our sessions. Back to you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Jen. We'll come back to you just to see them if we can have a little bit more discussion around this area. For this time, I'd like to welcome Sophie Nabuliri to be able to share with us what was shared in the breakout session for finance. Welcome, Sophie.
Thanks, Henry. We had very exciting, very interesting conversations in the finance breakout group, and we got a chance to listen to Brigitte and Ife, who, shared what the challenges they face in even as we're beginning their business and even as they go on with their business. And the key thing was around the area of finance, being able to get financing. They both shared how they approached banks. And they were not able to get the funding that they were requiring. And, some of the challenges that we see are coming out is, banks want to see numbers, they want to see the track records, they want collateral, because, the bank is also has to also ensure that it's reducing on its risk. And so, most of the young agripreneurs are really struggling in this area, just being able to get financial institution that will sort of, believe in what they're doing and be able to partner with them and be able to fund them. And, some of the, sort of solutions that were coming out, we heard from Hedwig, who was saying, even as we're beginning, as the young people are beginning, on their ventures, they could be looking to families and friends to start them off. Look at competitions. We have competitions that run, and it's a good opportunity. We have competitions like our very own Go Getters competition, where the young people are able to come in and being able to present their case and be able to get the funding that they require to be able to run with their businesses. But also what came out clearly is that we do have the solutions. And it's all about seeing how do we then have everybody, all the players in the ecosystem come together on the same table and just be able, the importance, Hedwig was able to share with us the importance of value chain in finance. How do we get all these players on the table together with the banks? How can we have the risk split so that then our young agripreneurs are able to be supported with the sort of funding, that they require to be able to run with their ventures, and something that was also critical was that young people also need to understand the language of the banks, and even as they are accessing, as they're trying to access funding, that they should be able to tune the money to the business cycles, and be able to gain the trust of the bank. So that was, that's a recap from our session. Thank you, Henry.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We will look to have more discussions around those areas. Then at this point, we'll go to Marjorie. Can you let us know what happened in the business support services group? Marjorie?
Yeah, thank you, Henry. So, well, we had a very insightful conversation and it was really amazing. So what came out clearly of the business support session was the need for networking and partnerships and creating partnerships as a young person. So we heard from our go-getter, the person who has walked the journey, Nono. She said, you cannot know it all before you actually enter the journey. And when you enter the journey, you need to understand what value do you bring as a person and partner with those who might need your skills and also partner with those who don't have the skills that you have for you to make it in the agribusiness space. She also highlighted some of the challenges that young people generally face in the agribusiness space. And we know this is a very complicated business, so it's not surprising that there's a number of challenges that are being faced by young people. We also discussed the need for skills development to understand the business landscape, to understand the business language, to develop the confidence that's needed for you to survive the agribusiness journey. And we also touched on the role of governments, the private sector and the public sector in supporting young entrepreneurs. So, we have solutions that exist. For instance, the Generation Africa platform is a networking platform where young people can actually come and learn from each other, but there are still some fundamentals that are very important and they need to be in place. For instance,
sorry for the inconvenience.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I think there was a disruption. So I was talking about the role of governments, the public sector, and the private sector in supporting young entrepreneurship. So there are some fundamentals that needs to be in place for business to operate efficiently. So there's need also for governments to look in infrastructure development and generally making the agribusiness space lucrative for young people. And also one of our panelists mentioned that organizations, they need to be intentional when supporting young people. So it's not like the needs are all the same. There's need to actually look for the specific needs for young people when it comes to supporting them to grow their agribusiness, and also understanding the context specific when dealing with young people, because the norms of doing business in different regions, they are different. So these have to be intentional. I think those are the things that came out clearly from the session we had. And it came out clearly that entrepreneurship is a personal journey. So as a person, you need to understand the business language, and you need to invest also to take the time to understand the business you are about to venture into. And it's personal. You need to invest on yourself. You need to partner with other people who have the skills you don't have, or who need the skills that you have. So I think that's what came out clearly, and we will share the detailed notes with you. Thank you, and over to you, Henry.
Well, thank you, Marjorie. That was an interesting session. Though I think we'll have a few questions to throw back to you, especially when you say it's a personal journey, but I think we also need to support them in that personal journey so that they can achieve. Then finally, we will have Mombi Maina, who will present to us what happened in the breakout session for innovation. Welcome, Mombi.
Thank you, Henry. And in the innovation session, of course, you can imagine it was probably the most exciting breakout session, right? Talking about the future of things, and it was very engaging. And I really think that the outcomes of the policy and advocacy session, the finance session, the business support session would fit very well into some of the solutions or what we felt we needed to drive innovation solutions on the continent. We had some of the challenges that businesses are facing. We had quite a number of innovative entrepreneurs in the group, and top of these challenges was the red tape around even setting up this business and getting it started. And of course, this red tape means that there'd be a lot of time, 2 years, one of our entrepreneurs shared, 2 years before he got his certification to start. There's also a huge cost to it. And that then, there's a huge need for patient capital and, flexible financing models, but also the infrastructural challenges. A lot of innovation is technology based, and is also anchored on the availability of internet to the users. And in Africa, the penetration may not be at 100% yet. And finally, the last challenge that we had was around the appetite for innovative solutions and the adoption also of the same. We often want new things, but then want them to remain the same. So to meet these challenges, we also saw that there are a lot of opportunities, of course, that innovation brings: the cost reduction, the scale to which solutions can be driven. The interconnectivity of the world today allows for us to innovate every day. And of course, COVID has shown us that we have to accelerate digitization on the continent. So in terms of game-changing solutions, we did come up with a few that we would like to move forward. And one is flexible business models that are either technology-based or that look at cost sharing amongst youth agripreneurs coming together in a community, not just to exchange ideas, but also to share some of the costs that their businesses may be having. Two was digitization, leveraging, digitizing our supply chains. I think coming out of COVID, that was one of the huge gaps that we saw in our agricultural value chains, was a lack of information on what's moving where and where is which farmer. So really digitizing our supply chains. And a great one for me was, how is the ecosystem organized? There are a lot of solutions out there, innovative solutions out there. And perhaps then, because they are not housed under one roof, it doesn't offer for the users to identify which offers value for money, which offers quality over the other. But more importantly, was that we are confusing the users. So the solution was to kind of have a network of innovators to come up with less targeted solutions and a bit of more broader, or even if targeted, holistic innovative solutions. So you have a functionality that works for the product side, one that works for the market side, one that works for the last mile consumer, but all in one solution. But to achieve all these dreams that we shared in the session, there's really a need for the improvement of the enabling environment. So the youth in the session talked about their challenges with corruption, youth exclusion at the national, at the government level. So really need to get our governments on board to support these youth-led innovations. And of course, finance. Finance is always a challenge, and more so concessional or patient finance, and finance that's targeted at startups. For innovation, the company will be a startup, but many investors prefer more mature companies. So trying to find some alignment between the finance provider and the company. And finally, mentorship. These companies are young, they have ambitions, and we all know being an entrepreneur is not easy. So having that overlay of a business that has gone already ahead and that can carry the younger business along would be also what is needed to get to see these innovative solutions realized and actualized. Thank you, Henry. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Mumbi, for that presentation. So to get reactions, so we'll be going to Mr. Adam, just to see a lot of issues have come up in terms of youth exclusion, especially when you're coming up with policies. How can we address this? And Job is talking about having agripreneur champions who will be able to sit on roundtable with governments. So we'll get back to you on that. I attended the session on finance, and one of the things that made me laugh was Hedwig saying, banks will only give you money if you prove you do not need it. So as youth, do we have that opportunity to say that we don't need the money? So in terms of being investor ready, what can we do to the youth so that we can show them support and they can be investor ready or finance ready to approach this bank? This one, I'd like this to be answered by Hedwig. And then lastly, we'll have Annie talking about having intentional support for the youth so that we do not have different organizations coming in with business support services that, you know, are targeting the same people. They have the same tagline, yet they do not have any need that they're trying to resolve. How do we have intentional support for the youth? So I'll come back to you guys, but for now, I'd like to number one display the results to the poll that we had. So in terms of the attendance, we have more female attendees by 3%. A majority of us who have attended this are below 35 years. That's around 61%. And then most of the people who attended this are young entrepreneurs, which is a good show. And this is where we'll be able to get now the kind of solutions that we need to get the agripreneurs running by the youth-led. So for now, I'd like us to run another poll. So for from the discussions that we've had, so in terms of rebuilding, we know we are at a point where the COVID-19 pandemic brought most of the businesses to their needs. So in terms of rebuilding, which aspect do you think we need to address urgently? Is it finance? Is it policy? Is it business support services? Or is it innovation? Then secondly, in terms of the long-term solutions that we need to come up with, what needs to be put in place and what needs to be prioritized? I know all of them, we need to work on all of them, but what will be most helpful to the youth in terms of building resilient businesses? So is it finance? Is it policy? Is it business support? And is it innovation? And what we intend to do with this poll is that, number one, we intend to have a call to action so that we understand in terms of rebuilding, where are the areas that we need to focus on? So that would be number one. And then in terms of going to the UNFSS with a long-term strategy, then we will look at the second part and say, these are the areas and this is the hierarchy and priority. We'll display the results in a few, so keep on voting. And so I'll start with Hedwig. As you see, banks give money to people who prove they do not need it. So in terms of helping the youth to get there, how do we ensure that the investors are ready? How do we ensure that the banks will look at them, though they do not have money, but what can they do to get to that point?
Well, I think I have a few advices which I also picked from other conversations like this one with young entrepreneurs. I think one very important one is that you speak the same language as the banker, so that you understand what they're looking for. So we have developed bankability metrics, and those are really helpful to know what bankers are looking for. And you really need to familiarize yourself with their language, because otherwise, if you stare at them and you don't know the difference between turnover and profit, then I think you're not a serious person to talk to a banker. So I think that's one, is try and speak their language. So study internet and make sure that you demystify the language that the bankers will use to you. I think if you're a startup, I mean, you can't go to the bank, right? So don't try, because they need something to judge your company on. So they need something, and that's why I understand one person was saying you need to open a bank account and you need to do all your business transactions through the bank account, and then after 6 months they might look at your company. And I think that's the way to do it. So I think you need to be loyal to a financial institution, to be transparent so that they can see what you're doing. So yeah, and if you don't want to do that, then you need to go to your friends and family and know that they trust you and that they know you're a reliable person, because your brown or blue eyes will not help to convince somebody to lend you money. And mind you, I mean, the banker is not playing with their money, they're playing with you and my and other people's money, right? So I'm very happy that they are so careful and risk averse. Because if they would invest without checking whatever they're investing in, I mean, that would be worrying for all our saving accounts. So I think, I mean, either you build your track record, you be transparent, keep your records, have your bank account with somebody you would like to deal with, and show what you're doing. And that's the only way to convince people that you are a good entrepreneur. And otherwise, convince your friends.
Very stern message there from Hedwig. Edson, I know you're coming up with a youth bank and probably within the AFDB. Are there any softer ways to deal with these issues, or do we have to be stern and ensure that the youth have to build their own records in order to, approach these financial institutions? Edson?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think Hedwig has put it very nicely that yes, we need to talk the banker's language, but also there's some resources out there where we try to get And this is a message for, all. I saw there are a lot of international NGOs out there, and maybe other banks, institutions, governments, that I think for some of our institutions, we need to be intentional in coming up with concessionary financing for this segment, because we find that it is very difficult for them to get resources. As you said, they don't have, some of them don't have a track record, or they're it's too expensive, to provide, credit or financing for this missing middle segment. Those who are looking for, $50,000, $100,000, to, $1 million is very difficult in the sector out there. So I think institutions such as, the African Development Bank, other development organizations, we need to be intentional of finding concessionary financing, providing instruments, such as guarantees that would further, de-risk these businesses. So that's just the one message that I'd like to add on to this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So Adam, within 2 minutes because of time, in terms of the youth participation in policy making, where do we stand? How can youth take part in terms of, engaging in policy making, both at the government level and also at the NGO level in terms of the projects that come in conjunction with the government? Welcome, Adam.
Great. Thanks, Henry, and apologies, my video has stopped working, but I just very quickly on this, I think again, on this particular dialogue, shaping policy is as much about politics and raising voice and having influence on policymakers. And so this is a great contribution already to the process and through the Food System Summit as a particular channel and a particular time in order to try and help shape what individual countries are doing, individual cities are doing, and so on. And so recommend again, please continue to use the action track surveys, to use these types of dialogues to bring evidence and ideas and recommendations forward to the summit that you'd like to see scaled up in your own countries or beyond. Simon Winter put a good link in the chat around a policy case study that was done in Nigeria and looking at some of the policy measures that can move forward a youth entrepreneurship ecosystem. I think that's worth looking at and seeing again what can be done to shape the environment from a government perspective, but also shape the environment in which NGOs and actors like the UN operate. It's within that framework that we can look at all sorts of policy recommendations to build a better ecosystem or enable finance, or as we talked about in our session, particularly to the entrepreneurs looking at things around local sourcing or local procurement targets. All of these are policy tools the governments have available, but a lot of times I need to see what's been done in other locations, see what's been successful elsewhere, and then crowd in the energy to move that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And finally, Anne, there's an issue of being intentional in terms of the support that you're offering the youth, so that we do not come with one cover and try to give all the youths in terms of business support, in terms of finance. We try to box them into one box and try to give them probably a solution that does not fit all. So in terms of this intentional support, what can be done in order to get all the ecosystem players to focus on a need and be able to deliver that?
I wonder if my co-chair Jennifer Barn is on the call, because I would be super happy if she could close out on our joint behalf.
Okay, Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon. So you're posing the same question to me, right, Henry? In a sense, like what needs to happen to be intentional. So this is very interesting. I've really been listening with a lot of interest to everybody. And I think intentionality is critical, right? It was mentioned a couple of times. We have to be intentional from a public sector perspective. You cannot enterprise your way out of red tape, out of a lack of internet, electricity, etc. So fixing the enabling environment should be a strong commitment. That's number one. Number two, I think also intentionality in terms of the models that we're developing from a private sector perspective, and also as entrepreneurs, whether it's smart technology, critical mass, and flexible models. But there was also a very important point, and I think that Generation Africa is speaking to that in terms of the ecosystem coordination. What type of platforms and partnerships are we building? What type of alignment? And also the whole point of mentorship. And how can we ensure that institutions across the ecosystem are actually focusing on all these different aspects with the intention in mind of supporting youth entrepreneurship? So I think that was a lot of great ideas that were taken, that we can have as a takeaway from these engagements. Lastly, and I was actually thinking about that as I was listening to all the different actors, we also have to be intentional on a personal level as youth entrepreneurs. Several times it was mentioned that there are risks and challenges in the environment. However, do you understand the journey that you're on? Do you understand the expectations of other stakeholders as well? Do you speak the language? Are you working on that? Are you networking? Are you thinking out of the box? How are you building knowledge? And how are you demystifying the environment that you're enabling in to strengthen your opportunities to basically deliver as a youth entrepreneur? I think from all of the different actors and institutions online, we are very committed to this space, also from an AGRF and an AGRA perspective to deliver, but we do need the voices of our youth entrepreneurs and these solutions coming through in order to act and could continue to be motivated and continue to look for innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think what is coming out clear is that there is need for intentionality, both from the young entrepreneurs and from these organizations that play in this sector. So at this point, I'd like to display the poll results as we end our session. So 53% of the people in this call say that we need finance in order to rebuild, in order for these businesses that were affected with COVID and other hard stuff, for them to be able to come up again. We need finance, and as we had seen, that is really a hard topic. But we'll try to look at some of the solutions that came from that group and see then what can we come up with. Then, in terms of a long-term plan, business support services came out clearly on top, but with a thinner margin. So in terms of then going back and seeing what can we do to ensure that the businesses that come up and the businesses that the youth come up with are resilient and will be able to, withstand the shocks, then it's clear that we need to come up with clear, intentional business support services that will enable these youths to come up with these businesses. In the chat box, I can see we are busy, and unfortunately, we'll not be able to go through all this due to time. But from my end, I'd like to thank you all for being participative in this session. We hope to have more of this before the summit, and we will be glad to continue with these discussions and even more. At this juncture, I'd like to invite Sophie Nabuliri to give us a few announcements, and then she'll invite the head of Generation Africa to close out. Sophie, over to you.
Thank you, Henry. I know we've run out a bit of time, so I'll quickly just go through a couple of announcements we'd like to share with you all on the call. Our Go Get 2021 competition will be launching next week on April 19th. The prize money is 50,000 USD. So young agripreneurs out here in our call, this is your opportunity. Be on the lookout in our social media handles for this launch. Then we also have an ongoing survey on the social economic impact of COVID on agripreneurs. We've just posted the link. And so just calling on all our young agripreneurs to participate in this survey. Would love to hear from you. And then Generation Africa has a monthly members call for organizations that work within the ecosystem to strengthen youth entrepreneurship. Our next meeting is scheduled for next month, May the 12th, and we'll be sharing more details closer to the date. The discussion will be around the UNFSS Action Track 4, which is to advance equitable livelihoods. If you'd like to be part of the members group, please do send an email to members@genafrica.org. And finally, one of our strategic partners, I think this has been mentioned, but allow me to just announce it one more time. One of our strategic partners, USAID, is currently running a COVID-19 food security challenge in Nigeria, which is open for applications from youth-led businesses. So if you're in Nigeria, please check it out. We have also reposted again the link on the chat. And just to take this opportunity to say thank you to all our panelists. You know, we had our go-getters, high potential alumni from the 2019 and 2020 cohorts. We also had subject matter experts who were drawn from some of our members and strategic partners. And so we just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for being part of this call, and even to all of you for attending. This would not have happened. Thank you for your insightful discussions and contributions. I then now would like to take this opportunity to invite Dixon, who is our head of Generation Africa, for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you everyone for participating on this. For me, I'm really excited. You can see the energy that I'm having at the end of this. And my excitement is mostly because I think we engaged the young team to facilitate this session and to also curate it, you know. And they have done a very good job, because we started off with around 130 participants, and we are closing with still over 100, you know. You've been able to engage all these groups and kept everyone interested in the topics of discussion. So Henry, Jane, Sophie, Mejuri, and Mumbi, kudos, good job. The other thing is the surveys. They've really excited me, because we had more female participating. We had more young people, you know, 61% were agripreneurs themselves. You know, so we are leaving that promise of engaging and putting the youthful young people ahead of everything that we do. And then that survey also of the levers that we need, you know, the most urgent service that we need has gone to finance, but the most helpful one has gone to business support, meaning that you get the money, then you need to know, you need to have a know-how of how to spend that money. Otherwise, it's all going to be to go to waste. Thank you very much, our co-chairs, our subject matter speakers. You've all been great. So I thank you all, and I declare this dialogue closed. We shall share with you the notes and reports that are consolidated. This was really big and good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We are really happy. We really appreciate for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. I wish you could have some more time to maybe give our comments, but anyway, it's okay. It's okay. Thank you for that.
Be sure we will be back with another dialogue, probably in another month, in the next month, and we can really look forward to that.
Yeah, this one has been really informative, actually, basically to us as Fastmax company. And, you know, we have really gotten a lot of insights. And maybe as we go on, we really look forward to more and more insightful sessions. God bless you.
Okay, thank you, and God bless you too. Good
Thank
day.
you.